This is the best type of property for your first fix and flip. What's the best type of deal for you to do with your first fix and flip? The one that causes you the least amount of stress with the most amount of profit and the least amount of risk. That's kind of my trifecta that I like to look at things through. There's almost nothing more stressful than that first fix and flip. It's hard. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to find it and to make it happen. There's a lot of steps. But after that first one, the floodgates start to open. You've got some more money in the bank, you've got some more confidence, and you have a better idea of how to make this happen, and you've learned from some mistakes. So I remember like it was yesterday when I did my first deal, okay? So I was a real estate agent. My wife was a real estate agent. We had already bought our first duplex. We were living in it. We turned it into a threeplex. We were renting the side and we were renting the apartment underneath us. So that's what was going on. I, at the time, was calling renters, asking them if they would be interested in buying a house for less than they were paying in rent. I found the communities that had the really high rental prices, and I would call those and say, do you want to buy? And over the phone, I could do a quick qualification as a lender to help give them a loan. And then my wife would put them in the car and go meet them at some properties and find a property for them and sign them up to buy a property. We would get the loan. And so that's what we were doing. We also help people sell properties, list their property for sale and find buyers for that and get those properties sold. At the same time, I knew creating long-term wealth was in buying rental properties. And so I continued to work on buying a property every few years. During that whole time, we started to get a little more into investing. We found some people that wanted to do fix and flips. And so what we thought of is, you know what? This real estate stuff is actually not a lot of fun because there's nights, there's weekends, and you're kind of an adult counselor. You're kind of at the beck and call of everybody, and it's a lot of ups and downs. And so we said, hey, what if we started working with some investors? We could find the property and make a commission. We could sell the property and make a commission. So we just doubled our commission on the same transaction, working with the same client, one client. That would work out really well. So we started finding some people that wanted to get into investing, and we would help find the property and we would help them sell the property. We would make those commissions, not have to deal with nights and weekends and emotional people. So that was really a great thing for us. Now, one day, my wife, who's a real estate broker, found a property and she said, hey, I found a great property. And I said, wonderful. Which investor are we going to give this one to? And she's like, I found the perfect investor. I said, fantastic. I said, tell me about this investor. And she said, well, you know, he's super good looking. I'm like, what? And he's really experienced and really knows what he's doing. I'm like, huh? Which investor are you talking about? We don't have any good looking investors. No, I'm kidding. And she said, you're the investor. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it really stressed me out. Now, think about this. I've already bought some rental properties. I've helped other people flip properties. I've helped people sell properties. And here I am with this property being concerned about moving forward. That's how difficult it is when you first get started as a real estate investor. It takes a lot to get you there. So I remember going to the property. I remember meeting with builders, and I remember the struggle I had in trying to find a lender that would help us out, which is one of the reasons why I started a hard money lending company, is to make that process so much easier because it was so frustrating. That's a story for another day. But I remember being there in the kitchen, looking at the property and being sick to my stomach because that day was our due diligence deadline, which basically means by 5 o'clock, our earnest money was going hard. Meaning if we didn't move forward with that property, they could sue us for liquidated damages. They could sue us for enforcement of the contract, or they could take our earnest money. Those were the options. And I was just kind of sick to my stomach. And my wife looked at me and she's like, hey, what's the worst thing that could happen? I'm like, the worst thing that happened is we could lose a ton of money. And we don't have money. Losing a ton of money is a really bad thing. It wasn't like we were povertish or broke, but it wasn't like we were millionaires and rolling in it. So it was a tough thing to do. And so she said, you know what? The worst thing that can happen is we end up having to file bankruptcy, and we're not going to be a whole heck of a lot worse off than where we're at right now. And I said, yeah, you're right. And with her encouragement, we went ahead and moved forward with the property. The property's on Lamar Street. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I'll never forget the feelings and experience. Now, everything went great. We got the remodel done. We got the property sold, and we made some money. And that started us doing more and more of our own fix and flips, and eventually led us into lending money as well. And that's how we got our company started that we have today. One of the most important things is focus on single family homes for your first fix and flip. Lots of people are looking for commercial, or they're looking for fourplex or duplex or 12plex or that type of stuff. I think that's the first thing is let's look at single family. That's gonna be the easiest one for us to fix up. It's so much easier to fix up the one property than have 20 toilets or have 4 toilets and 4 kitchens and that type of stuff. So we've got to focus on single family. The other thing is, if we are flipping plexes, you're flipping it to an investor, and those investors are going to need to make a return, and so they're not going to pay as much as a homeowner. We want somebody that can get a little bit emotional, they can pay more for the property. That's what we're looking for, and so that's why we go through I like single family houses. The second thing I want to talk to you about is price ranges. I remember back in the day, I met a lot of investors that said, you know what, I've done a couple of flips and I made $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000. Man, I want to do a flip and make $100,000, and I'll just do like one flip a year. And so they started getting into these like $1 million properties. Well, there's a few concerns with $1 million properties. Number one is most people don't realize what $1 million properties take to keep up. So I'll give you an example. I bought a property that was $1.2 million. And one of the things that I learned really quickly is you can't go to Home Depot and get light bulbs. You have to go to a specialty light store to get light bulbs. The other thing I quickly realized is anybody that's interested in a property like that, they know appliances, they know that it's gotta be Wolf, it's gotta be gas, they know all these things. That's what's happening here. And so when they walk in, when you go in there with your Home Depot paint bucket and you put it on and you put some crappy little fridge in there and think everybody's gonna be okay because it's stainless steel, they're like, this isn't a Wolf fridge. And so that causes a lot of problems. And so what I found is most people in that range didn't know what it took for buyers that were in that range. So that's one problem. The other thing that I find a lot is that these types of properties are the first to go down and the last to come up. When we talk about what happened in 2008, we started to see those higher end properties crashed and the lower end properties didn't crash as much. And the lower end properties went up faster and the higher end properties took more. For example, the house I live in right now, which I bought as a foreclosure after 2008 time period, that property sold for over $1 million. I ended up purchasing that property for about $350,000. And to this day, even today, when prices are really high, I don't think the house is worth $1 million. I think it's worth probably $750,000 or $800,000. Now, that's an amazing return, super happy with that. And I love where I live, so I'm not interested in selling that property. However, my point being is that $1 million mark that the house actually sold, I think it was $979,000 is what the people paid for it before us. It's just not back there yet. And that's my point with the higher end homes are the first to go down and the last to come up. So my recommendation for you is to stay in the median price range. How can you know what that is? You can simply Google what's the median price range for whatever county or city that you're actually in. The next thing you've got to be really careful of is make sure you stay underneath the FHA limit. The FHA limit is basically how much the Federal Housing Administration is going to be willing to lend on the property. That's the maximum they'll go. If it's over that amount, then it has to go where somebody's doing a commercial type loan, or a conventional type loan, I should say. So with that in mind, the majority of your buyers are getting FHA loans because they have the lowest down payment, the lowest closing costs, and it's easier to get those types of loans, especially if their credit isn't the best. FHA makes it the easiest to get. So based upon those types of situations, most people are trying to get FHA loans. So if you stay in the medium price range under the FHA loan limit, you don't go after these $1 million houses, you're looking for single family houses, those are going to be the best things you're going to be looking for. The other thing I really want to add to this is if it's your first deal, a major rehab is not a great idea. A lot of people get involved in fix and flips and underestimate the amount of work it takes to manage contractors, or they underestimate the amount of times contractors can walk off the jobs, or they underestimate how much work they have to do to put contracts together, to put scope of works together, to put pricing, to do bids, to do draws, to make sure that the contractor work is the way that it needs to be. As a matter of fact, we employ full-time project managers that help borrowers and contractors do this to make sure our investments are good when it comes to our loans. This is a lot of work. So if you can do something with a lower end rehab, it's going to make it a lot easier for you. You're not going to have as much profit in a lot of cases, but instead of doing a huge remodel, if you can keep a smaller remodel where you're just dealing with carpet paint, maybe a new kitchen and bathroom, rather than having to fix some major things or do some adding bedrooms in the basement or that type of stuff, which can add to the complexity. Now, that's a fine line. line because you might run into a deal. And if you do, maybe you should wholesale that deal until you've done a few construction projects, unless you have a lot of experience in construction. So there's some give and take there depending upon your individual circumstances. But these are the things you've got to be looking for when you are trying to decide what to do on your very first, find your very first deal that you're going to flip. I've put a video together, why hard money is the backbone of fix and flip funding. I talk about why hard money comes before finding a property. This is very important. Why every deal should start with finding a hard money lender and things you should look for in looking for hard money lenders. I'll put a link to it here on the video so you can take a watch with that. You're really gonna enjoy it and make it a very profitable day.